I appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Absolutely.
A little out of context for what you would regularly do, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say we're sitting on like leather couches and in like this pimp office here, and
Spotlights on us.
it's spotlights on us, and yeah.
So a lot of people, maybe they don't, a lot of people should know, but if they don't know, you are Steve from Stainless Diesel.
Yep.
Not Nitrous Express.
Not Nitrous Express.
So how long have you been with Stainless Diesel?
As far as an employee, 2021. Long before that, obviously, you could see me running around with them on the racetrack, pit crewing with them. I had my shop for about 10 years before I came to work with Johnny and closed that place down and came to work here. But used to do a lot of R&D, a lot of shop tie-ins. I was an hour from this location, so.
You were using the product a bunch and
Yes.
You know what I mean, sell it to your customers and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And
Yeah, it was a kind of a household name in the shop. And then, like I said, I personally did, I had my own chassis dyno, stuff like that. Did a lot of the R&D on some of his newer stuff.
Now talk about the race team a little bit. Like I think 20. I think 20 is like when I started coming around.
Yeah, so 2020 was like the year.
That was a year,
Dude, we had the time of our lives. We met some awesome people. We made some great relationships. The truck was absolutely on fire, and rightfully so. It took us, 4 or 5 seasons
to get
I think
there.
16 was probably when I started, really 15 to 16 was when I really started helping out, and he just went full tube in that rain. I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 15, 16. He went to Common Rail, went to full tube, really started swinging at Pro Street. Man, we got our butts kicked for a long time. Triple turbo setup forever, and then we finally went single turbo nitrous. And I think that, at that time, we thought we were using a lot of nitrous. A lot of things would contradict what we were doing then, comparatively with what we did on the Pro Mod. But 2020 was, I'm in Virginia when we went PDRA. Junior always says, or Ben, for everybody that doesn't know him, let's call him Ben.
We'll get into that later.
We'll get into that later. But we will never top 2020. When you can unload the truck, pretty much just let it sit all day. Goof off all day at the track. And I remember a Florida race, we didn't even fire the truck till I think 4 p.m. and Johnny didn't even show up to the track till 2-3 o'clock. So we all goofed off at the track all day, went and got ice cream. He floated around the lazy river. Like he might as well have just like dropped in with a helicopter and a pimp suit, you know what I mean? But the team that we had together, Johnny's brother Mike, me, Junior, Ben, Roy, my main man Roy, Derek helped out a bunch, Derek Barney. The team, we knew the truck. Johnny entrusted us to kind of just show up and drive it, and everything was way laid back, and it did what it was supposed to do. But if you didn't fire it till 4 p.m. and then you go out and you make 4 or 5 in a row of 480 passes like a bracket truck at 4,420 pounds, like you got it figured out pretty well.
Well, and that was the thing, because that, like, when I met you guys, like, from my perspective, it was like, here are these guys that are off the chain wild.
Yeah, I think I honestly brought a little bit of that dynamic to the team. Like, I don't know, the first couple of years I was helping out, I was really quiet, but I noticed that behind, in the truck on the way to the track, everybody was kind of different than they were at the track, and I wanted to bring a little bit of, let's talk a little smack, let's get some people fired up, let's make it competitive, and let's just bring some personality, to that dynamic. So I would say around 2020 we got pretty notarized for kind of just being, I don't want to say village idiots, but there was a lot of personality, you know what I mean?
There was no question. The Stainless crew was definitely having a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever questioned that. But then it was also so amazing to see, like, I don't think I've ever seen Johnny sweat. If anything even seemed like maybe it wasn't going right or anything, but Johnny's just like, yeah, no big deal. You know what I mean? And then, like, you guys would just show up and just, like, crack off down the track, and it's like...
There is still, and I'll have to see if we can get the video off of one of his old phones, but like I think the Virginia track for PDRA was the first time we got to spend a lot of time with you. We obviously had spent a ton of time with Kyle. We'd been fighting some transmission issues, some things that we had kind of designed that had worked great for a year and a half in the truck, decided to just implode and break themselves at that track. And we were fighting a number of different issues. We had the intercooler out of the truck. We had a number of things apart, and I changed the nitrous setup, and I basically explain to you how much more nitrous we put in it towards the end of the night. And you just, like, the look on your face was like,
sure.
Yeah, and I made Johnny record it because I'm like, hey, just record Matt's face, because at that time in diesel, nobody was using that much.
Right.
And Brian Gray was the king, and he was there, and even he was just like, geez, guys, you guys aren't screwing around over here. So we leaned on everything we had in that truck to the point where we were past, with certain things that we were using at that weight limit, we were past the dynamic design of those components.
Yeah.
So we either had to redesign stuff or whatever else.
And then the other thing that amazed me, the way that the computer system in that truck ran, took a engineering degree just to understand. Like,
so in Pro Street, when Johnny decided to make Pro Street, and once again, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but there were still a lot of 12-valve trucks in the field at that time. Even Dustin Jackson's truck really wasn't crazy popular as of yet, right?
Wasn't there yet, yeah.
It kind of wasn't there yet. I think it existed. I'm pretty sure the first time I saw that truck was in 15, so around that time or whatever. But the thought was, let's just use more horsepower than we have to, and this setup will do traction control, right? And it'll be safe, and it'll be gathered, and it'll catch us in process of certain things, and it'd just be like crazy advanced for the class, right? What we didn't realize was it was going to take 4 years to even figure that out.
Yeah.
So, and we were running nitrous kits off of radiator like cooling fan sublet assemblies inside. There wasn't an extra channel. We didn't have any of the PDM stuff that came with the Bosch, but we were using every channel we possibly could, and we were stacking multiple outputs onto one channel. And I think I saw Luke raise an eyebrow a few times at some of the stuff we were doing. When he built the truck, it was gorgeous. You know what I mean? It wasn't like the truck was ever ugly, but everything in that particular truck was the best of the best at the time, down to every nut and bolt. And the wiring was top notch at that time and everything. And 3 years in, I think we just got kind of tired of treating it like a princess. And the more that we kind of treated it like a redheaded stepchild, so to speak, the faster it got. And it was almost like it just kind of wanted to be, smacked on its ass a little bit. And once we developed that kind of relationship with the truck, believe it or not, I know that sounds crazy.
It's weird because it's like, it was like a miracle of modern technology that thing would even leave the line and go down the track, but then do it fast, repetitively, everything. I never really saw you guys doing a ton of work in the pits, you know what I mean? But, Junior was on the computer, and, we did talk to him about, some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I played with the nitrous quite a bit. We'd switch a lot of things on the nitrous, which was set up to where it was decently easy. Turbo, with the addition of Turbo 400 in like 18 or 19, and then figuring that out in 2020, and really playing with charge pressure and trying to make setups for variant charge pressure, because we were using cone components at the time. We really didn't have access to too much dump technology,
right,
and smooth lock and all these things that Rosler's clearly got figured out now, and that we've learned in the Pro Mod,
right,
but we didn't have access to any of that. So, I mean, we were using boost reference lines with check valves to try and raise, and we were using stuff that nobody had any clue, and it was the ugliest looking stuff you'd ever seen. If you peeled layers off the truck, like, wow, look at all of that. You know what I mean? But it worked.
Like duct tape and bubble gum. Wasn't duct tape and bubble gum because it was like put together, but like it's just random shit.
We had more homemade fittings towards the end of the truck's life for like dash 4 lines going together, and we just I can't tell you how many sections of dash 4 line would be tied together to make it to its destination, and things. We had more custom made fittings, I think, than anything on the truck. And like I said, it liked being treated that way.
I mean, it worked, and that truck was amazing for quite a long time. You guys got into the Pro Mod, and then I think we sold the guy an engine over at D&J. For who bought the truck.
Yeah, I don't remember his name. I never met him. Nick obviously got to meet him when he picked up the truck, and I think Trevor and Johnny did, but I wasn't here that night. Haven't got a chance to meet him. I've heard he's pretty good dude.
How has stainless changed from years ago when you first started working here, to now in current day form, and how we see it?
I don't know if we have that much time. I mean, R&D of turbos is R&D of turbos, no matter how you slice it or dice it. But when you're taking 300, 400 kind of more performance-based turbos, all the way down to, say, a BorgWarner box unit, and you have to start to learn to do R&D, or you're doing R&D for a now 100% a daily driver bolt-on turbo that's using an OE calibration in it, and things of that nature. So even just changing the compressor wheel design in, say, a stock unit and putting on the truck could cause a surge, could cause something else. So your testing definitely goes a different direction.
I mean, that's going to be wildly different than what we're trying to do in a race perspective, where it's full wide open, make as much power as we can.
I mean, the R&D you get at the racetrack is bar none some of the best stuff you will ever get in your life. I mean, that data is, that will all trickle downhill into the bolt-on region. But, we talked actuators, and we were talking about how to make the actuator program better. And you said, well, what all do you need to make the actuator program better? Well, I would need, this, and this, I think would be a great step in the right direction, but that's only half the problem. And you looked at me funny and said, why? I said, well, because the control effort, the truck, the tuning, the calibration on the ECM, what ECM it has, just in a Dodge platform, you've got 4 different ECMs you're going to struggle with in the span of, what is that?
VGT stuff?
10 to 11 years, you're going to have 4 different ECMs in there. And who knows how many different calibrations each controller or each board has had. So,
and who knows if there was dealer updates at any point, and some trucks have and some trucks don't.
If you get a good tech that buys your product and goes to put it on, and he does struggle with some things, our tech department here is pretty good. And they will raise the right questions. They'll ask you the right questions to get headed the right direction. And once again, you can talk about that scenario. Then you could talk about dealing with the average customer who doesn't have an ASC certification or isn't a full-time wrencher. And, honestly, hey, maybe I just wanted to put it on for a little bit noisier turbo. As far as the dynamic in the shop, obviously we brought Nick on board. Everybody who doesn't know Nick should know Nick. Glorious head of hair. You can't miss him. He's got a personality 1 in a million.
We've been featuring his mullet heavily on social media.
Yes, and rightfully so. It's gorgeous.
It deserves it, yeah.
It's gorgeous. I get a fair, regular amount of inquiries on my Snapchat, putting up Snapchat stories from a lot of people. Man, that's glorious. How long did it take him to grow that?
Yeah, he's got work in it.
Yep.
He didn't wake up that way.
Nick is really helping with the program. Obviously, Ben Jr. Has been around since day one, being part of the family and all. And then you got my man Eric doing the fab work. He's been here. I don't know how long he's been here. He was doing, when I was a customer buying for my customers, he was doing the fab work then too. So the dynamic in the shop has changed a lot. We're constantly changing and evolving a product on the shelves for sales, and then you're toppling that with, okay, what works this year, we may change up next year. Lots of products and lots of parts, internal parts out for changes, R&D individually, turbine wheels, compressor wheels, changing designs on them and stuff for data that we're getting back from the customer base, from the technicians that we're working with, guys that we do R&D with. So,
and I don't even know that people know, because that's not, we don't publicize that on social media. We're not putting that information out. I'm sure if people are calling and talking to you, and you're obviously, sharing that.
Yep.
But I don't think the general public knows just how much of your time and other people's time is spent in doing that kind of stuff and trying to really nail down and make sure that every person that ends up with a stainless turbo is having the best experience they can.
Like I said, there's a lot of variables in that equation in the bolt-on market, more so than there ever was in a fixed vane turbo. You can do everything right with a turbocharger, but if the setup is not correct for the turbocharger, just like all the videos we've done with Johnny talking about correct sizing and making sure you get the correct turbo for the proper application, you can put now amplify that problem by putting moving componentry inside the turbo that is electronically controlled. And so you have wiring harness in between the control-E, which is the turbo, and the controller, and then you have, like I talked about, how many different calibrations have been changed on that. Whose calibration is in it? Whose tuning is in it? You couldn't pay me enough money, knowing what I know, building these turbos, doing R&D on them, and putting them together every day, to not run a correct style boost gauge in the truck. And I talk to the customers about this all the time. So correct style boost gauge would mean one that honestly reads accurately. So many people use monitors. What a lot of the guys don't realize, and gals for that matter, is that every map sensor, because that's what you're looking at when you're looking at a monitor and you're seeing this boost ramp rise.
So we'll explain that real quick. When you're looking at the plug-and-play OBD2 data,
Yes.
all it's doing is plugging into OBD2 and it's reading that data and showing it to you on a screen. And the boost number that it's showing, because if it's showing it to you in PSI, that sensor doesn't even read in PSI. It actually reads in KPA.
Well,
so it's converted.
Most of them will read in voltage, but a good data transfer, like say a CTS2 or CTS3, those are pretty decent units for bang for the buck. They're going to transfer the raw data in voltage. They might go from 0.5 volt to 4.5 volts, 0.5 volt to 5 volt, whatever's mapped out within that system, and it's transferring, it's changing all that over to where you can see it in PSI. But there's a cap on the voltage, right? So some of them may only read to 35 pounds. Some of them may only read to 30 or 28 pounds. On any of our bolt-on turbos, the whole sets, the Cummins variables, the whole set versions of those, any of our GT37 base stuff, power stroke, 6.7 power stroke, 6-liter power stroke, like any more than 40 pounds is really taking this thing to a level where we wouldn't recommend keeping it there. Right? So I make that max recommendation of 35 pounds. However, the gray area is 35 pounds is kind of where that map sensor would tap out on a lot of different manufacturer stuff in that range, right? So if it's hitting 35 pounds, is it really doing more than that, and can you not see it? So, and something a lot of the guys don't realize that I talk to, Edge makes, for anybody that has an Edge monitor, they make a standalone transducer that goes from 0 to 100 pounds. You buy their 5-volt wiring kit and their transducer kit, and you can actually see up to 100 PSI of actual manifold pressure boost.
And you don't have to, and it's pre-programmed.
Yeah, I mean, it ties right into the EAS under the hood. You don't have to run any extra wires in the cab. And a lot of guys will still want to go to I'm a big analog gauge guy myself, and I'd much rather run those. But
see, I like
it's nice having everything tied into one thing, I'll tell you.
It's that, and then you can also record it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, the analog gauge, you've got to physically be looking at it.
Yes.
And be like, oh, did I see it? And you're right. I think a lot of people don't understand. It's a 0 to 5 volt reference. If 5 volts is 35 PSI, it can be 50 PSI.
It's just, that's all you
max.
see.
It's 5 volts.
Yeah, it's tapped out. It's tapped out. So Hardway makes a 10-bar map. Be 100% honest with you, I don't know if it's for 5.9 or 6.7.
I don't know.
Heard a lot of guys talking about it. I should probably look into that. But generally, when I'm on the phone with customers making those recommendations, I have a computer in front of me so I can look it up. And I've probably looked it up 12,000 times and I cannot remember. But 10-bar map sensor would be great. You would have to, I believe, alter the calibration to plug and play it. But it's one and done. You know what I mean?
You can't plug that one in and it'll just work. You have to rescale the map.
You have to rescale it all in the back door.
And that's a big thing because we talk about customer education. The people who buy our products vary so much in their level of knowledge and use and everything. Kyle had said something about watching some of these videos, and he's like, some of this stuff is really simple stuff that either I already know or I feel like I should know. He's like, but then you catch me with some ones that I felt I should have known that and I didn't. And then I'm just hooked. Okay, well, what else didn't I know? And you know what I mean? And we talk about it with the 9-blade turbines and trying to help people on the website because they're like, oh, well, all I see is 5-blade. Let's go into a little bit about, back to the basics. What are the basic parts of the turbo and what is the terminology that we would be using, or if somebody called and got you on the phone, you know what I mean?
I'm going to try and keep this as non-complicated as possible. As Johnny tells me all the time, I have a tendency to overthink things. Overdo it a little bit.
We'll go boost side, cold side.
If you were to hold up, say, a turbo from the side, the compressor wheel is going to have a taper, a big side and a small side. And the turbine wheel, which is your exhaust-driven wheel, is going to have a small side and a big side. So first and foremost, the small side of each wheel, the compressor wheel, the small side is the inducer. The big side is the exducer. Obviously, air goes in and flows out. Okay. The turbine side, it kind of works reverse. The inducer's the big side.
Because that's
the way the air flows over it. It hits the bigger portion of the turbine first, and then it'll taper down for your bore. In most cases, some people will run straight bore turbines and things like that. But in most cases, and everything that would be on like a daily driven turbo,
normal truck.
It would be the turbine's going to taper down, and then that would be the exducer because that's the last point of flow of air over that turbine. So they are literally connected on the same shaft. You have exhaust energy coming out of cylinders, turns the turbine, and that in turn turns the compressor wheel. So if you hear somebody talk about a turbine housing, turbine wheel, that is the hot side of the turbo.
Exhaust side.
It's the exhaust side of the turbo, aka the hot side. The compressor side would be a lot of times referred to as the cold side because it's intaking fresh air and making pressure, right? So you're intaking air into the front of the bell and you're compressing it and pushing it out the side, basically.
See, that's the thing. I'm like, I think it's pretty obvious which is the feed and the drain. But like, if you've never bolted on a turbo before, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
You don't know.
You're not going to know the recommended sizes. So 2G frames, 3G frames, obviously had a factory oil line. Like they had an oil line from the factory, so you can match that oil line up. The factory oil lines on those trucks, on the Cummins trucks, were like kind of in between a -4 and -6. It's a -6 face seal is what they called it. Our -6 fittings and our -6 lines will flow a little more than that. We've actually tested and compared the two. 400 frames, we call them our extreme duty oil line, which is a -6 line. Pretty much anything that you're going to put a 400 frame on, we would really recommend a -6 if it's journal bearing. So once again, here we go, because now you could journal bearing and ball bearing completely different. The size of the turbo really doesn't really have much to do with it. What I tell people on the phone all the time, even if Joe Schmo calls in and orders a 465 cast from us. So Borg 012 that a lot of people don't realize it from with the 012 part number in a Borg box. You take that sucker out and you threw 30 of them away this weekend.
Yeah.
T6 83 turbine, T6 110 turbine housing. Right. And literally Borg flowed that turbo. Their map was done with that turbine housing, right? As soon as we shove a 90 on it, T490 or a T410, it is now technically a custom turbo. So I always tell people, if you're going to do something like this and you're going to put a turbo on the truck, you call and you ask all these questions about what size to get and what's recommended. After you get it on, you get some boost numbers off of it. You know, hey, I don't know exactly if I did the oil line right. I don't know if I did the drain right. Call the guys that built the turbo. No matter whether it's us or another turbo manufacturer, ask them what they recommend. That's the best way.
You can definitely overfeed it.
You can. You can. So in a cast cart with journal bearings, obviously I was showing you that cutaway.
The cutaway, yeah.
Literally it's cast with open pockets, right? So when I set a center section onto a turbine wheel, I'm going to set it to where the actual straight cut and the seal that collapses is facing up towards the feed, which means that cart would have to fill all the way up before it starts to spill through that, 2 10,000ths air gap or whatever. I honestly do not know the specification.
Off the top of the head.
Yeah, off the top of the head. I'd have to get out the notes on that one. But ultimately, if you've got more feed than you do drain, the cart's just going to continually fill up. And then it doesn't matter if you neck down the feed to a 32nd of an inch.
Right.
If it cannot drain it out, it is going to spill it out the front, out the rear, or possibly both, or individually. Yeah. It's a pretty common problem.
I don't think there's any situation, can you over drain? Like, having an oversized drain as a negative impact?
That's a good question.
I don't think you can. There's no, there's no negative impact of...
Another thing to think about here too, saying that actually kind of the light bulb came on. 2001 VP44 Dodge truck, okay? Or even let's take it back to the 12 valve days, okay? 96 12 valve, super duper 4-wheel drive 3500 dually, the cream of the crop at the time. The oil line was the -6 face seal like we talked about. And a lot of people forget how big the drains were on those. Literally 7/8 ID.
That's pretty large.
That's huge. It's gigantic, right? Half of the drain.
ID, yeah.
It's gigantic. Yeah. It's gigantic. So, I mean, and that's on a little crap baby HX35 that was 54 millimeter, right? When you put that into reference, that big old drain, as soon as you, technically, if you were to take that drain off and put like no specific manufacturers involved here, but say you put a -10 drain kit on there because you want a good looking JIC drain. A lot of people don't realize is just because the hose is -10, start miking the ID of the fittings. And I've seen as small as 400 thou. And just to put that into reference, right, that's under half an inch. And what it had was 7/8 of an inch ID. So you cut it in half.
So people think like I'm buying this nice -10 hose kit. Yep. And I guess we can talk about it. Like some people know that I had a line and fitting company. And one of the things that I did was cut open every single fitting to measure the orifices and how it mattered. But the thing that I found is that there was a lot more difference than there was to the Haynes.
A lot of variance. I tell everybody, if you want to run a -10 in by the math, we would say if it's a -6 oil line, like our -6 oil line, or probably pretty close to anybody's for that matter, what we'd like to see is minimum 625 thousandths ID at the smallest point in the chain, right? It's 5/8 of an inch. That's still getting a little bit small, but that's where we would like to see it.
if I was pouring 2 gallons in at a time, but I could only take a gallon out,
Yes.
like eventually the bucket's going to overflow.
Yeah, it's basically going to start spilling over.
Right.
That's a great analogy, actually.
Speaking of analogies,
here we go.
We got one, and it went a little crazy on TikTok. Definitely was the crowd that ate that one up. We talked about 9-blade turbine versus 10-blade turbine.
Yep.
So the exhaust wheels. A lot of people don't understand. Like when we make those videos, my job is to make them in a way in which I believe the most amount of people will want to view them, and the most amount of people will gain knowledge and then learn the stainless diesel name and then eventually buy our product. That's my job. Sometimes we do things in a way.
The comments, I think half of them, honestly, I was laughing at quite a few of the comments. It's a lot of advantages and disadvantages to both.
Right.
And it could go either way. I mean, that could be like politics for that matter. What will work well for one guy in his setup may not work so well for the next guy with his setup. You know what I mean? 9-blade has its strengths, obviously, and it can have weaknesses too, depending on the application or the setup. I mean, I build bolt-on turbos every day, and some guys will call me from 7,000 foot in Boulder, Colorado, and really ask the best recommendation. And a lot of people don't realize we do this either. I've got 13-blade turbines that I can put 12 and 13. You know, the Garrett-based stuff would be a 13. The whole set-based stuff would be a 12, and we can make that tip-in on the turbine just like your factory turbo. But the aero package is still a hell of a lot better designed. Right?
Yeah.
Way more efficient.
Because like people got all crazy about like, well, if a 9-blade turbo is better than a 10 because it pushes the air out quicker, well then we should do a 1-blade. Ha ha ha.
How about no blades are the best?
Blades.
No blades are the best.
Yeah. And it's like, the thing is, we have to make content, like we're limited by factors.
Sure.
Short form content can only be so many seconds long anyway. So we can't give you the full explanation and detailed specifically in your use case and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes we can give some generalized information and have some fun with it. That's the other part of it too, is if we make it fun, then it's easier to educate the customer and the user and everything else.
Well, one would think so.
You would think. So what does, talking about the VGT stuff, obviously that's new technology.
I mean, in the diesel world, as fast as it's progressing, our original VGT design turbos in light duty pickups. So I'll probably get hammered for this one too, but Ford, Chevy, Dodge, they're all light duty diesel.
Right.
Okay.
They are.
So I don't care what anybody says. In the diesel world, they are light duty diesel. And the first one emerged in 2003. Okay. So, I mean, if you look at that, it's well over 20 years old. A VGT design is well over 20 years old. So with the progression that I have seen on the racetrack, on the dyno, and all the frames that are going on as bolt-on turbos, I would almost call VGT old technology at this point.
What is the purpose of VGT technology? What is the purpose of having the vanes that move in and out? Like, why was that beneficial?
VGT, actually, a lot of people don't realize that it stands for variable geometry turbo. It's kind of like, you know, you've seen the memes and you've seen all the joking behind VTAC, right?
Yeah.
Variable valve timing. So the theory behind variable valve timing was to obviously change the valve timing at an RPM to which it could utilize it and get your bottom end drivability. So the theory behind a VGT turbo is just that. It's a surface area thing, right?
Okay.
We're going to close down the surface area of the housing. So it'd be like putting and these are just random numbers that I'm throwing out there. There's no actual math to this, but it'd be like necking down say a 125 housing down to a 0.80, getting your tip in and your drivability and getting that turbine shaft up to speed, start to make pressure, and then you start to open that housing and you let it breathe when it really wants to start moving air. And basically you go from a small housing to a big housing, small housing to big housing. So
gotcha. Yeah, so it allows you to have that low end foot heavy into it, and it's got the RPM, and an engine is just a giant air pump, and it's really moving that volume of air. It doesn't require that small, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It can be a little more free.
A lot of the testing that I did on Ford so many years ago, I was a big 6-liter guy back in the day, believe it or not. I used to get made fun of from Johnny all the time. I think guys with ponytails just generally don't like Ford or something. I'm not sure, but I used to get my...
Well, Drew's bald and he's got a Ford.
Testing the fixed vane stuff, when we would put a big enough housing on to make really good power, and when I say really good at the time, a lot of the stuff I was testing, mid-range injector size, very streetable stuff, 600 to 800 horsepower, streetable 6-liter diesel.
Right.
In that 650 and up range, 650 to 750 generally is where they land at the tire. If I had 1-to-1 drive, they drove like a complete pile of trash. Tip-in was never good. On humid days, you could never get on the Charger without nitrous, no matter what stall you ran in the converter. And once again, this is all in my opinion. Now, I would take a T410 on an S300 and neck it down to like a T483.
Right.
Okay. And all of a sudden, I could get on the turbo without nitrous, but I'd lose 25 to 50 horsepower at the tire, depending on the size of the housing I picked, right? So just to give you an idea, now let's factor that equation with now we go from one housing to the next, right? You're going to get that bottom end drivability, and then you're going to make the horsepower on the top end. So some of these setups, daily drivers actually want positive drive at low RPM. They want to be opened up, and when you get to a point in the data where it wants it, then the turbo wants to start breathing, it wants to start making some good RPM. Essentially, your veins are opening up.
Now, there's obviously drawbacks to that because those systems are electronically controlled.
Yep.
So there's issues there. Those systems are directly involved in the exhaust gas, so they're subject to carbon buildup.
Yeah, you basically have moving components made out of a variety of metals, some Inconel.
So that's an issue.
So we're not going to get off topic on that, but
Yeah.
you have moving componentry that essentially is in the exhaust stream. You can't oil it. You can't lube it. You can't do things of this nature. The worst thing in the world for an old 6-liter turbo, Garrett based with rolling vanes on pins was to leave it hooked to your camper and never start it, never get any heat in it, because the vanes would actually start and the unison ring would actually start to rust and just get stuck, right? So anybody who has experienced that knows exactly what I'm talking about. You take the turbo apart, machine the unison ring and or replace it, clean up your vanes, put it all back together, just do it all again later. So many people were so prevalent to go, I'm going to put a fixed vane on and not have to deal with this anymore. But where people do that, they forget. It's like doing a 48 swap on a 68 truck that was so popular for so many years. So many guys that I talk to, I'm just going to put a 48 in it and I'll never have to mess with it again. And then they'd break a 48 in half and go, and what the heck? Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Well, you just didn't want to deal with 68 problems, right? So a lot of people went away from variable for so many years. I tested 5-blade frames. There must have been 8 different ones on that excursion. It was on the dyno. Probably every 3 months, it would live on the dyno for 2 weeks at a time. And then I would go to the racetrack and usually I'd break it all in half. I'd stay up 3 days, break it all in half in 2 or 3 hits and go home, just depressed. My customer base is big. I just didn't have as much time as I wanted to focus on it. But ultimately, I tested so many frame turbos and then came the addition of the 5-blade variable 6-liter turbo. Trevor and I put the first one together, and I didn't even work here at that time. We put it all together, threw it on the excursion. It was a 6674 T4 83 at the time, 650 horsepower at the tire. I had a Dynocom dyno made right at 650, made about 40 pounds boost. EGTs I really didn't scope in that frame because there was so much testing done on it, but we literally dropped a 63 in it. It had a 195/75 injector and I think they were from Industrial Injection. It was an 05 excursion, but it was an early model oiling system. So when we had done the top end, basically when we changed engines, I changed the branch tube so I could run a late model pump. So we had a thumper pump in it from RCD. We had a fast 125 gallon per hour system on it that obviously they don't make one for an excursion. We fit one on it. An easy $40,000 in parts in this thing and supporting mods. Okay. So we just put the variable on it, literally put the variable on it. Didn't even change the tune-up. And it made within 25 horsepower, it made 5 more pounds of pressure, and it no longer drove down the road like a turd and just hazed on a hot summer day. I didn't have to look out the mirror when I was driving it down the road like, who am I smoking out now, right? Once I saw that, I never went back. Like I said, it's got its place. If you want to make 1,000 horsepower, there's probably variables out there that can do it, but is it going to be long-term dependable? Maybe.
Well, that's the thing, because in one of my other lives, working with hot shots, people ask, is there anything you can do to help the VGT vanes? And it's no, because oil doesn't touch it. It's exhaust gas. If you produce a cleaner burning engine, I'm sure that could be helpful, but it's still subject to exhaust gases.
Yeah, and then different regions will have different outcomes there. Southern Arizona, you're just not dealing with rust.
Yeah.
Up here, You leave your truck sit for 2 weeks, it's going to get surface rust under the hood, things of that nature. So back to the 1,000 horsepower variable comment. And you'd actually sent me a message 2 weeks ago. Can you compound a variable? One of my most favorite trucks ever was a LLY based Duramax. It was an actual LLY based SoCal Stage 2 engine. Had a 72R from Danville at the time, and it had our 485 on it. 100% over injector and 2 pumps, and that thing, I mean, on ATS's dyno at elevation, it was whapping down 12, like anywhere from 1130 to 1230 at the tire. A lot of people probably saw the truck years ago. It was back, God, I think I had it in 16, 17-ish.
Yeah.
5-position switch in there on the tune file, right? Turn it down to level 3, throw the wife the keys and the kids, and go get ice cream in the truck. If you're trying to make big power with a variable, and there have been plenty of guys that have called here and said, man, I'm using these big 68 millimeter plus variables from everybody on the planet. I just can't get one to live. And I've got 150 over injectors, man, compound it. You'll never look back.
Yeah.
Literally some of the most fun, exciting driving trucks in the 4 digits that I've ever owned and had the pleasure of working on and doing R&D on have been a variable on the manifold or in the valley, obviously in a V case, with an atmosphere hanging out there, and you run a gob of injector and you have a whole lot of fun doing it.
That's interesting, because now that like the more we talk about the VGT stuff, the more that I understand it. Like, yeah, it really wouldn't matter, because when it's wide open, it's wide open. Yep. So I don't care if it's compounded and everything else. Yep. It just helps you, and it would probably actually help you get there better.
Yeah, I ran that Duramax like 2 or 3 years, and God, we dynoed it anywhere from Mississippi to Colorado to, and we went all over the country. And believe it or not, that one truck probably made me more connections in the diesel industry than a lot of things did. I had a great time with it, but I can't recommend doing that enough to anybody. Like, it is, I mean, just compounds in general. I've dealt with people for a long time in the diesel industry, and I've never, ever heard somebody say, and I just wish I hadn't put compounds on. And this was a horrible idea, right? The only downfall of the compounds, you work around more things, and obviously internal components might need to be a little bit beefier. Your torque curve is a little bit stronger at that point, especially early in that RPM range. They're not for everybody either, but I can't recommend 2 turbos enough.
You're right. Like, I've never heard anybody say, like, I wasn't happy with my compounds. I'm going back to
and if somebody says, man, I just can't, I don't like the way they drive, or it's smoky, or pressure isn't right or something, obviously something is wrong.
Right.
Turbo sizing correctly, they've got a boost leak somewhere, maybe somebody didn't make the hot pipe right. When you break down compounds, I mean, you get into, well, what size hot pipe is it? How long is the hot pipe? Is it side by side? Is it over under? I mean, there's a million different variations. So
talking about some of those issues, like with leaks, because I think that a lot of people don't realize just how easily your system can be leaking.
Oh, yeah.
And how much of an effect that can have on everything else.
It'd be great to put like a specific number to something, but I know in testing that I have done, we sell boost leak checkers for everything we've got.
Yeah.
First and foremost, like if it's a 6.7 power stroke turbo, we've got a boost leak checker for that. If it's a Duramax, we make a V-band on, super duper nice billet front cover, a boost leak checker for that. But I tell all the guys, when you get that piece, go down to Lowe's, Harbor Freight, Menards. I mean, anybody that sells any kind of tools is going to have a little regulator that they would sell you in hopes you'll put it on your compressor. But it'll obviously it's a $20 or $30 regulator. It's going to explode when you put it on your compressor or whatever. But that's how I set the gates literally. And any boost leak checks, any pressure checks that I'm doing in the shop, or I'm setting waste gates or anything like that, I basically use it, and it's plug an air hose into one side.
Yep.
Let's assume you got 100 pounds of airflow going into it. You run a hose to your waste gate, or to your boost leak checker, and start turning up the dial. Most systems out there, man, if you run 20 pounds through it, you're going to see a lot in 20 pounds. You don't need to put 100 pounds through the front of the turbo to find leaks. Most working pressures on these trucks is, most of these trucks do 20, 30 pounds of boost.
And then the thing is with the way that all of these stock or daily driver or a lot of anything that is not full race specific, none of them have waste gates.
Yes. So we could go on for hours about no gates. And obviously no blow-off valves, and where those devices, man, would save a ton of turbos in the diesel world.
So why don't we use them? Like, why?
We're going to start putting rings on our manifolds. We're going to make them plug and play for some of these guys in certain sizes. That's in the works. On the long list of things to change, but we're making recommendations on more gate than we've ever made. Same size frame turbo, for a good example, 88 millimeter GT55 on the Pro Street truck. By the math on the horsepower calculator per mile an hour, that was 2,730 horsepower when we went to 482. It's 157.46 or something. So let's just say 158 mile an hour. It's like 2,730 horsepower. We had 245 gates riding springs. That's all we had. Guys running that same frame turbo, literally our product, and it was our product on the Pro Street truck, are going to 250 millimeter gates to keep shaft speeds and pressure under control now. Yeah. But they're using a boatload more nitrous than we did too.
That's also
that's a factor. I think the cubic inch of the engine, the flow of the cylinder head, the type of camshaft. I mean, all of these things are variables for sure.
It's huge factors, and I think that what the people don't realize is a lot of component failures. If the system is leaking, you can build it as great as you want, but if we're overspeeding the turbo, there's nothing that we can do about it. In a gas car, everything we do in gas car is wastegate controlled, and we control at any point, and even factory stuff, and then even some diesel stuff is internally wastegated, like S300.
Yes.
Internally wastegated things. Yep. There's a reason it's there.
Yep. Well, I mean, look at the pressure ratio the gas guys run, though. 20 pounds on a gas car, I mean, you could make 800 horsepower with that, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
At the tire. An easy day.
So
I've seen 17 pounds make 750, 700, 750 plenty of times, and it's a walk in the park. What are you going to do with a diesel making 17 pounds of boost?
Nothing.
Exactly.
It's not going nowhere.
Exactly.
It weighs 3 times as much.
So, like Johnny has stated in so many other videos, I mean, some of these single turbos that we're making now, still with a journal bearing, are making pressures like in the compound turbo territory range. You're doing 60 to 70 pounds on a single frame S400. That should be 2 turbos. You know what I mean? And it would be 2 turbos on a gas car. At least I would think. I mean, obviously I'm not big in the gas world, but I would think that you'd have a V configuration naturally, unless it was like 2JZ or something like that.
Right.
And you might be doing 70, 80 pounds of boost, but each turbo would be making 40.
Very fair question, because I think a lot of people get confused on this. In a V configuration, what we mean by that is it would be a twin turbo setup. They're fed by separate sides of the motor.
Yes.
So they're fed by separate.
That would be what you would call parallel twins.
Parallel twins. When you create 10 pounds of boost out of this turbo and 10 pounds of boost out of this turbo, is it 20 going in, or is it equalized to 10?
I couldn't tell you. That I really honestly can't answer. I honestly don't know. I've never personally tested that, because I've never done any R&D with 2 turbos on parallels. Technically, there would be no way to test that, because pressure will always equalize. Shaft speed would determine whether or not one was making more pressure than the other technically.
As smart as everyone is and everything, like, there's still some shit we don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, they didn't know that. They're fucking stupid. Like, first of all, you don't know half the crap we even do know. So
yeah.
Like,
and some of the best information learning experiences I've ever been involved with were probably more accidental than anything.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, the data you get at the racetrack when you are just clearly grasping for going faster. That's why Pro Street was so fun. Like, just thinking about this heads up all out, it's going to be it's going to weigh a ton, right?
Yeah.
And just make it go as fast as you possibly can.
Was it always 4,400 minimum?
So initially it was 4,500.
Okay.
And then a lot of the stuff that was done was per NHRA rule book. So if it was a weight thing, it was plus or minus 1%. 4,400 was technically the weight limit when we went 482. And we had the record for a while off of that pass. When you set a record pass, they make you weigh it if they're not weighing every round. So we weighed 44.20 with Johnny in it. Yeah, that's what it weighed going across the scales after the pass. Roughly, based on nitrous consumption at the time, it would have been 44.27.
Okay.
At the beginning of the pass.
Yeah.
We used 7 to 7.5 pounds a pass back in that day.
You particularly have been working very hard with a lot of our dealer network and a lot of our customers. Anything that is Cummins VGT warranty goes through you.
Yep.
What are some of the things that we've been implementing around here?
In the world of production and manufacturing, like in our case, the actuator. We cannot manufacture the actuator. If we could, I don't know what it would cost to manufacture an actuator. I probably don't want to know.
And maybe we could do it better. Maybe we could do it worse.
Yeah,
we don't know.
and you wouldn't know till you dumped however many dollars into that program to figure it out. So with as many manufacturers, and obviously there's one OE manufacturer of the actuator, which is Wholeset, and then you have a lot of remanufacturers that have great warranty programs. So what we did, we've tried about 5 different manufacturers of actuator now, probably in the last about 4 years, I would think, since we really, they hit the website and they were going out like hotcakes, right? I mean, we tested them long before that. What we've done is we've gone back to in the United States, remanufacturer stands behind their product grade and has a very, very low warranty percentage, like under the 2 percentile range. Tried them years ago, and the only reason, believe it or not, that we went away from them was cost base. I think one of the lovely things about manufacturing, once again, is you're always trying to find a way to increase your profit percentage at not the expense of the quality of the parts.
Well, and of the end customer, and meanwhile, inflation and everything else. So
sometimes it takes a year to a year and a half of a spreadsheet and dots on a spreadsheet and data demographics that show you what's really working and what isn't long term. Anybody who's went and bought TVs, stereos, tablets in our day and age knows you could talk to 12 people that have a Samsung tablet and they're all happy, but for whatever reason, you got one bad, right?
Right.
So when you start to look at that scenario over long term with, say, thousands of people instead of 15 people, you get a lot of data points to look at, right? So we've went to a remanufacturer. We're working on extending the warranty out past our normal warranty, something we've been talking about doing, hoping that comes soon. You've been privy to a lot of things in the building downstairs, and we've completely changed the assembly process, the shipping process, everything about what we're doing with these turbos, down to looking at the data of how many actuator problems we have 4 states over versus 3 states over, and realizing that warranty percentage is higher. Okay, these things are probably taking shots in shipping. We need to start packing them different. I mean, so much has changed.
There's a lot going on there, and talking about those changes, and then internally we're implementing stuff on how we track it, how we keep up with the customer better. And we just spent 2 whole days redoing everything in the shop to try to make things to be more efficient, so we can help the customer quicker, so we can turn things around better. So there's a lot going on, and I think that we don't often, we get so caught up and we just spent 2 days redoing the shop. Nobody else in the world knows that. And we have to do that job of telling people hey, we are committed every day to being better for you.
So the other thing, I don't know if I think I'm a pretty personable guy. But if anybody's using our variable product, if anybody's has anything to say about it, they have any feedback, I'd love to hear about it. Steve at stainlessdiesel.com is my email. The more data, the better. You know what I mean? You can, I don't care if you've had a product 10 years or 20 or 5 or 1, you can always learn from people if you listen to them.
Don't call Steve and be like, hey man, F you, this piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. If you really do want to have something.
The only person that can call here and say F you, Steve, is Miles Smith.
Okay.
All right. So
I don't know who that is.
My man, Miles Smith.
I'm
you
sure
never met Miles?
I'll get it off.
You never met Miles?
Who's Miles?
Miles Smith. So once upon a time when I had my shop, when the little S10, when Pinky, when Roy was driving Pinky and Johnny owned it.
Okay.
It was at my shop when I was doing some transmission things to it. We all kind of had a theory about gear interchange with that truck. It was VP, low RPM, and the more we rode gears in it at a higher RPM, the slower we would go. The less we could row gears and keep RPM down, the better off we would go. So I had a theory about shift timing on the truck. And that theory came from Roy was trying to run 670 at he was at Rocky Top, and he was trying to run 670 in the truck, and it kept going too fast. And he had 1 qualifier left, and he goes, what do you think I should do? You think we should turn the box down? And had a quad on it at the time. And I go, just don't shift into overdrive. Don't bring the RPM down. It'll slow it down. He goes, okay. And it came back, and it went a 10 faster doing that. And I went, well, I'll be damned. The shift interchange takes time. That's wild. I guess I never really put that together. So what I did was we were trying to get Roy into the 9s, put a little more nitrous on the truck, and I actually took a portion of the valve body apart that would house the overdrive accumulator, and I found a Craftsman spark plug socket, literally a 5/8 drive, like from 1958 in my toolbox, Craftsman, and I put it in there instead of a spring. And the theory was if we can get it into overdrive quicker, even a 10th quicker, we might see a half a tenth at the stripe, you know, because we were doing quarter mile at the time, and it worked. It went a 995, and we didn't really change anything else other than that. Well, I put a video on Snapchat doing this, and this guy Miles, he's my man Miles Smith. He's out of Alabama, machinist, great guy. He was running in 670 in a 12-valve truck of his at the time, and he got to be real good friends with another old customer and friend of mine, Travis Younggreen. And Miles used to call me all the time for advice. And he saw this Snapchat, and he calls me. He goes, man, I want you to build me a transmission. I go, why? He goes, I seen what you did with the, with spark plug socket and this, that, and the other. And I go, really, dude? And he goes, yeah. And I said, man, this was kind of a joke. I mean, I did it for a specific reason, but I wouldn't just do it on like anybody's transmission. I'm not going to
sell that to you.
I can't sell that to you, brother.
Just sell you a trans with a
But before I spilled the beans on that, I kind of, well, you know, it's going to be, you know, XX amount of dollars for the R&D on that particular product. And he goes, fuck you, Steve. And this fucking crazy fucking Southern accent starts coming up here and actually working with us here at the shop. And this FU Steve thing became like this household name. Well, then when I decided on the race team, I needed to be the guy on the starting line, ruffling feathers, trying to get in people's heads. Like obviously always joking around with everybody, bringing personality to the team. Other people started saying it. Then Amy decided, and I don't know if there's one on this one. For a while, you would order the stainless diesel t-shirts in whatever variety. It said hashtag FU Steve on the inside of the shirt. So if you were at the bar and you saw me like, hey, what's up? You know, you just have an out-of-shield blast with it. And then we started making stickers. And it's a household name, you know, like it's like straight Forrest Gump shit. I don't know, man, but we have a good time with it. That's the important part.
And that's the thing. I think that anybody who's ever hung out with the Stainless crew, you may regret it.
my man Chris Shear says, and I don't know how. It's still, I love Chris Shear to death. And he has said that the Stainless Diesel guys have made the do not party with list.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if he's being serious or if he's just doing that to get into my head, but I wouldn't be afraid to party with us. We have a great time.
No, like too good of a time. Yeah, that's right. Like you get older, and you know, and then like it's a very good time. So we try to have a good time around here, and I think that you know we need to do a better job of showing that to everybody.
Obviously, comments on videos are one thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And I enjoy the camaraderie, and I laugh and I snicker a little bit. Not too much bends me the wrong way, but. If you have questions, like legitimate questions about anything that we're making, specifically the variable stuff on my end, but send us an email. Yeah. You know, sales@stainlessdiesel.com. My email is steve@stainlessdiesel.com. Or pick up the phone. I'm the only Steve in the building.
Yeah.
You know, lots of people every day. I get a kick out of it. We get orders in, and they hashtag, you know, F that Steve guy right in the orders comment.
Yep.
So I think Amy just made a new batch of stickers. I'll be sending those out with some turbos and stuff, and join in the fun. Hashtag some stuff, like spread the word. Hashtag FU Steve. It's like I said, it's a household name.
Oh my God. And I think that's important too, because it's like we talked about with why do we have so many fucking exhaust housings in this building?
I don't know if I've ever seen anybody lose their mind with exhaust housings, but you did it this weekend.
Like, because I can't fathom it. Like, it doesn't make sense.
So many options. So once again, like, let's put that into perspective. All of those different size exhaust housings in a variable, right?
Yeah.
It's all kind of just one, right?
All in a variable, yeah. It all becomes, So we should.
So like you're watching me stack 300 housings on the bench and measure and mic them all out, measure them all out, and write on them what they are and everything else. It's a Durmex turbine housing, right? And all you got to know is the bore for the turbine. What size turbine does it fit?
Yeah, and the thing is, we have a lot of options, and I'm telling you, like this is like telling people publicly, we would rather you call and ask us this question. Yes. And instead of just being like, I think I need this, and then picking it, and then not being happy.
Make sure you're getting what you need, 100%. Remember, 9 and 10 blade, exhaust side, hot side.
Yep.
5 blade will always be the compressor.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap us up for today.
Yep.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Maybe I don't know that I can get Junior to do this. Junior's got some really cool knowledge in his head that I want to
That
pull out.
dude needs to be on camera. He's so good at it.
So if you guys want to see more of this stuff, let us know down in the comments below, and you guys can get all of your S300, S400, VGT, Cummins, Duramax, Power Stroke, Jet Boat, Caterpillar. No, Jet Boat's not real. Well, could be, but Caterpillar is also real. Any of those turbos, www.stainlessdiesel.com.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah, buddy.
Was that? That's not bad.
Oh, no, not bad at all. There'd be a lot of editing.